The latest Star Citizen Live just wrapped up, and it confirms something that we already knew. Crafting in Star Citizen isn't just being designed as a side activity, it's becoming the backbone of the entire economy of the game. From how materials are valued to how items are produced, traded, and eventually replaced, everything is going to be connected into a single player-driven system. So in this video, we're not just going over features, we're going to look at what it all means and the direction CIG is clearly heading toward. At the heart of this system is a deliberate and carefully controlled approach to value. As discussed in Star Citizen Live, players will not be able to convert low-quality materials into high-quality ones, and this is not a limitation, but instead is a foundational design decision. Allowing such upgrades would inevitably lead to a homogenized market where high-quality resources become the norm, effectively eroding scarcity and undermining player-driven trade. Instead, CIG are preserving the integrity of RARITY by ensuring that high-quality materials remain genuinely difficult to acquire and therefore inherently valuable. At the same time, lower and mid-tier materials are not being sidelined. They are being repositioned as critical components within the refining process, which is itself becoming central to crafting. This creates a more nuanced resource ecosystem where different material grades serve distinct purposes, and efficiency depends on understanding how to leverage all of them. In that context, exclusively pursuing top-tier resources may no longer be the optimal strategy, but rather a narrow approach in a system designed to reward balance and specialization. What all of this means is that crafting is just at the beginning. What has been introduced so far represents only the initial layer of a much broader system, but the intended direction is already becoming clear. As outlined in the last episode, blueprints are evolving into a long-term progression framework where acquisition, tracking, and eventual upgrading are going to form a core gameplay loop. With the introduction of tiered items, progression is not limited to incremental stat increases. Instead, it's going to enable deeper specialization where material selection directly influences performance characteristics, often with deliberate trade-offs. This shifts crafting away from a linear upgrade path and toward a system of meaningful customization where outcomes are shaped by player intent rather than predefined best-in-slot solutions. As the system expands in 4.8 to include ship components, weapon attachments, and industrial modules, its scope will now grow significantly, laying the groundwork for increasingly complex production workflows. Over time, this is going to extend well beyond small-scale fabrication, moving into integrated production chains, base-building infrastructure, and ultimately elements of ship manufacturing, which is going to position crafting as a center pillar of the game's long-term economy. However, none of these systems can function effectively without a reliable and scalable inventory foundation, and this is clearly an area in active development. As highlighted in Star Citizen Live, while the current implementation still represents limitations in responsiveness or visual clarity, the direction is firmly established. CIG is working toward an interface that feels immediate, fluid, and intuitive, with ongoing improvements to rendering, loading performance, and overall usability. More importantly, the focus is shifting towards functionality that supports real gameplay needs, robust organization tools, refined stack management, and the ability to merge and split materials with consideration for quality, as well as practical features such as renaming cargo containers for operational clarity, something that players have been asking for years at this point. These additions are designed to form the underlying infrastructure required to support player-driven economy activities such as trading or logistics. And yes, what may ultimately define the success of this entire system is the approach to player trading. As discussed in Star Citizen Live, CIG is not designing trading as a simple menu-driven feature or a background transaction system, but as a fully realized in-world activity. The intention is for players to physically travel to locations such as trading hubs, TDDs, or even player-operated bases in order to buy and sell goods, which is going to reinforce a sense of presence and interaction. I was personally so happy to hear this from the devs. As a fan of Star Wars Galaxies, I have been calling for such a system for years on the channel, and I am really happy to hear confirmation it's something that we are eventually going to have. Looking ahead, NPC markets are also expected to respond dynamically to player behavior, with supply, demand, and pricing influenced by actual economic activities within the game world. However, this vision remains dependent on the maturation of supporting social systems, which are not fully yet implemented. As a result, while the framework is clearly defined, its full realization will require additional foundational features before it can operate at the intended scale. A key aspect of the system outlined in Star Citizen Live is the deliberate integration of previously separate gameplay loops into a unified production ecosystem, which is something that we've been talking about on the channel for a while. Mining, refining, and salvaging are no longer being treated as isolated professions, but as interdependent stages within a broader resource pipeline. Raw materials extracted through mining are intended to feed into the refining process, which in turn supply the inputs required for crafting. Salvage expands this further by introducing alternative material sources, including components derived from specific ship manufacturers or even alien technology, each contributing distinct resource types. Notably, material quality is designed to persist through these stages, meaning that what is recovered, processed, and ultimately crafted retains a consistent value profile. One aspect in particular caught my attention because it's not something that we often talk about, and it's item degradation, which is going to serve as the primary driver for long-term economic activity. Without it, item permanence would inevitably lead to market stagnation, removing the need for continued production and trade. Instead, CIG is implementing a life cycle model in which all equipment gradually deteriorates through use, can be repaired within limits, and ultimately requires replacement. This creates a consistent baseline of demand across the economy. At the same time, the system is being carefully balanced to avoid excessive friction. Degradation is not designed to be a constant burden, but a gradual process unfolding over meaningful periods of gameplay. For example, a ship component may remain fully functional over extended use before reaching critical wear, with proper maintenance further extending its lifespan. The objective is not to introduce repetitive upkeep, but to establish a sustainable consumption loop where item turnover occurs naturally, which is designed to reinforce the relevance of crafting, resource gathering, and trade over time. When viewed as a whole, the systems outlined in Star Citizen Live extend well beyond the scope of crafting alone and point toward the construction of a cohesive, player-driven economic framework. At its core, this approach emphasizes the importance of resource scarcity, meaningful decision-making, and active player participation as the primary sources of value creation. Rather than relying on artificial constraint or isolated mechanics, the design seeks to establish an environment where materials, production choices, and player interactions collectively shape the flow of the economy. Although these systems are still in an early stage of implementation, their underlying structure is already visible as crafting is now starting to be implemented and gets iterated patch after patch. Ultimately, the question this system raises is not just what is being built, but how players will choose to engage with it. As outlined in the last episode, these interconnected systems are designed to support a wide range of roles within a single economy, whether that's the acquisition of rare materials, the operation of large-scale industrial chains, or participation in player-driven trade networks. Each path represents a different way of contributing to and shaping the wider game world. And that marks the end of our video. If you have made it this far, well, I would be very interested in knowing where you see yourself fitting into that structure once these systems are fully coming online. Are you going to be taking part in crafting, or maybe you're just not interested in the economy? Maybe you think it's too much for the game? Let me know what you think in the comment section down below. If you found this analysis useful, feel free to subscribe for more of these and consider supporting the channel if you want to help it further. A sincere thanks as well to Dr. Frobin, Socartassisius, Shadowrise, Okitudoker, and Zero Crusher for their ongoing support on Patreon. Until next time, I've been the Eradicator. I wish you guys a wonderful day. Cheers.